And really this talk is based upon the structure of nature, the structure of the natural world, and the order of the natural kingdoms. And we're all familiar with these. And we're all familiar with them on the outside. So we know we have the mineral kingdom, the vegetative kingdom, the animal kingdom, and above all of that we have the human kingdom. Yeah, we're all familiar with that. We consider one more in the context of this work, which we call the noble kingdom. And we'll get to that in the context of the talk. Now, although we're very familiar with this, and although we're immersed in this every single day of our life, because we're surrounded by the natural world and the human world, very, very few of us have internalized this understanding. Very few of us, actually in the whole planet, really know what these kingdoms are on the inside. And it's the understanding of what these kingdoms represent in the inner reality that actually defines this work and defines the practice that I do. That is basically what you might call the basic construct, the foundation. Now, you're all familiar with the kingdoms of the world on the outside, so when I start to go through this explanation I'm going to take you through, called the human house here tonight, it'll unravel each level of this hierarchy of kingdoms so you can understand how each kingdom, first and foremost, operates on the inside. Each kingdom, the mineral, vegetable, animal and human levels of consciousness, are first and foremost on the inside. They are then manifest out into the environment, externally, into the universe, as the kingdoms of nature, which we're all familiar with. But they're primarily internal. And yet, our focus is always towards the external when it comes to the kingdoms of nature. We always think, oh, nature, it's out there. Right? So, what we'll do is we'll have a little quiet, just for a minute or two, and I'm just going to take you through a process while we're having a silent moment, and then I'm going to go through drawing this on the board, labelling and writing and demonstrating each level of these kingdoms as it exists for all of us on the inside. So let's start with a quiet. This is only for 1 or 2 minutes, and then we'll go into the human house. Okay? So eyes closed. I actually do this at the beginning of every session. So for me this has become almost a daily practice, if not sometimes 2-3 times a day. I'm standing in front of a client and we're having a little quiet. And the idea of this quiet really is to come into our centered awareness, to come into our presence, and come into an open space where we can receive an idea. And this idea really is the root of this entire work. In fact, it's a single word. It's one word. And it is the cornerstone, you might say, that this entire work stands upon. And it's the word surrender. Surrender. It means different things to different people. But really when we say surrender in this context, we're really referring to the type of surrender that we do when we bow down to something that is more noble, that is higher, that is bigger, more loving within us. What we call the noble self. As humans, we are always surrendering to one force or another. We're always, in other words, in a state of surrender. We're always surrendering. But we usually surrender to the wrong or the inappropriate forces that are lateral or below us. And we'll explain that and you'll understand what I mean in a little while. So this is surrender, which is only to that which is above. Okay. Get my glasses. Get my pens. Okay, so you imagine, if you can, in your mind's eye, if you've still got your eyes closed, you can open your eyes if you like. If you could just imagine, before you came to this planet, before you came to Earth, that you were, and you still are, a spiritual being. And in a way, you decided that you wanted to embark upon a human journey for a specific reason. So why would that be? So try to further imagine that you're a white speck floating in white space. How will you know what you are? If you open your eyes, basically they were exactly the same colour. One would be indistinguishable from the other. We would call this an undifferentiated state. And this is how we are in our spirit nature, in our spirit self. We are eternally that nature. But our awareness has yet to dawn in terms of what or who we are. Self-consciousness, in other words, is something that we are seeking. What we call in this work, illumination. We're looking to taste, rather, or experience our true nature. We're not looking to understand it. We're not looking to intellectualize it. We're looking to actually experience who and what we actually are. And yet, with this white speck, you might say, floating in white space. Hey, Nigel. So how do we define who we are? How do we get to understand what qualities, what resources we have as spiritual beings? We have to come into the material universe. And this is the journey we're all on. But in order to define what it is that we are in our spirit essence, in order that we can taste it and know it for real, in terms of a direct perception or an experience, we have to have that which is the opposite. We call this the basement. And they draw a house. I'm not very good at drawing, so I do warn you. The basement, or the mineral kingdom. Material life force, we call this. Basically, this is the material universe. This is the physical universe. These are our bodies. Things like walls and cars, pavements, stones, rocks, clouds. Yeah? This is the physical universe as we know it. And we come into physicality because we want to define ourselves through the contrasting opposite. This is a universe, what we call, of relativity. We define ourselves by what is not us, or the non-self. So really, this level of our house defines what we would call the non-self. We call it the basement. Now if you think about a basement is a place which is usually dark. It's usually beneath the surface of the earth. So in psychology, they would refer to this as the subconscious. It's also our body. It's physical. And by the way, I've actually written all these notes out for you. So if you think to take notes, you can. But I actually will give you them anyway at the end. So you can just relax. So if you think about the basement, as I say, you're going down into the earth. You're going down into a place which is dark. It's a bit scary. It's a bit creepy. It's a little bit dusty. Cobwebs and spiders. Little rodents and rats running here and there. Yeah? So down here is basically a fearful place. We fear what it is that we're going to find down in the dark. Down in the subconscious. Because down here we have what's called a non-illumined state. If I was to draw a little lamp, effectively that lamp would be switched off. It's non-illumined. And the reason why it's non-illumined is that it's not illuminated within us as spiritual beings. There are aspects of us, qualities within us that we are looking to taste and we are looking to experience. Our consciousness hasn't experienced those things inside of us yet. So we come into the physical universe in order to have that experience of ourself. But those things we haven't experienced yet are effectively non-illumined, non-conscious, dark, subconscious in other words. Can you see?
Is it the shadow?
The shadow, yeah. This is the shadow self. And we choose a particular type of shadow. Now, I believe in reincarnation. I was trained many, many years ago as a monk. When I was 18, I left home and I became a Vedantist, a Hindu monk. And I studied in India. And one of the precepts of Indian Vedic philosophy is this idea of reincarnation. That we come time and time and time again. But with each incarnation, we have a new basement. Every time. A new physical body. And the reason for that is because down here in the basement, we have a new pattern. A new pattern. A new, you could call blueprint. This is our patterns. Our coding. What scientists would refer to at the physical level as DNA. And it is unique to each and every one of us. But we are choosing a particular lineage, or we're choosing particular parents because they have a particular pattern that is the mirror opposite of what it is that we're seeking from the spiritual self. So in other words, say for example you wanted to find in this lifetime a pattern that would allow you to taste how courageous you were. Yeah? So you would come into an environment, perhaps, where there was a pattern here which challenged courage, which forced you to, as it were, find and dig deep and to bring that resource of courage to the surface and express it into the world. So say you were born into a pattern whereby the family pattern was not to express, not to put themselves out into the world, not to go against authority. Say there was a pattern here of total compliance, of obedience to the law. It could be a religious pattern, it could be a social pattern, it could be a cultural pattern. It could be all combinations of these things. So you're born into a very obedient, very law-abiding family. But something happens, and it requires that you find courage. This then would be a resource that you would then taste, that then you would experience something new that you hadn't gleaned before. Yeah, do you understand?
Yeah.
Through the relativity. So what we have down here in the basement is stuff that actually is what we call resources. We have all our resources. And yet, what we have down here is a place which for most of us has no value. Most of us don't value what we put down in the basement, or what we have in the basement. If you think about what goes into a basement in a house, think about what we put down there. What do we put down there? It's not useful stuff, is it? It's stuff we want to stash away, right? Stuff we want to store. Yeah? It may be useful at some point, and then we can go down there and perhaps find it, dust it off, bring it out, give it a bit of an oil, give it a bit of a tweak, and get it going again, like an old bicycle or a lawnmower or a pair of shears or something. But basically what we put down into the basement is stuff that's in storage. So down here what we find in the basement is all our histories. These are our pasts. So this is all the past. But it's not just our past. In this life, our personal past. It's also our ancestral past. Because remember, we're inheriting these patterns from our forefathers. So down in the basement we have our... I'm running out of room, aren't I? I definitely need a bigger board. Anyway, we have our ancestors. In fact, we have all of them. It's a pretty crowded place. I've done work with clients over the years where We've looked at the ancestral lineage, we've looked at the ancestral line, and sometimes we've gone back as far as maybe 20 generations to find a particular pattern that was started 20 generations back. Now, if you think about how many ancestors live at 20 levels down on the ancestral tree, it's probably hundreds. You have you, then 2, then 4, then 8, 16, 32, 64, right, 128, 256, 512, 1024, 2048, and that's only, what, about 7, 8 levels down? We're already up to 2,000 people. So you can imagine if you were to go down, say, 12 levels, 15 levels, 20 levels, how many thousands and thousands of people are contributing to the gene pool that has made you.
How does that get done?
How does it get done? What do you mean, Marcus?
When you say you're healing someone 20 generations past, I mean, how do you go and pull out from 1,000 people which one?
Yeah, which pattern? Yeah. Well, I don't do it. We're in the context of the work, basically they will guide the work to that pattern. Yeah. And they will tell me what pattern it is they're seeking to illuminate right now. The reason for that is that this is a place which is very much either on or off. If you think of genes, not genes, but DNA, yeah? If you think of DNA genes, they're either on or off. You can't have a partially on, partially off gene. It's either active or it's inactive. This part of us corresponds to what we call the reptilian brain. Now, I know there's quite a lot about this. David Icke and co.
It's kind of a nice coincidence that it's reptilian, isn't it?
A nice coincidence. What do you mean, Marcus?
Well, you know, because it's his thing that we're... Does everyone know about David Icke? I don't know.
I assume everyone does, yeah. Yeah, but it's not just David, actually. I mean, there are a lot of people that actually have suggested that this planet has been visited by reptilians, extraterrestrials, all this kind of stuff in this long, distant history. And even now, to this present day, they're operating behind the scenes, covertly. Can you see? From the shadows.
But if it's reptilian, right? I mean, how is the reptilian brain? Is it a simple brain? What is it? Is it an advanced brain? I'm confused by all that. In our scientific terms, what does it mean? Like,
It's the stem of the brain.
Stem.
Yes.
So it's
thought. It is. Yeah. That's right. It's the most. Yes, that's it. It's fight or flight. It's on or off. Snap and bite. You know. Yeah. Think of an alligator. You know, it's like that's how they work. Yeah. It's there's no shades of grey when it comes to the reptilian brain.
It's pure instinct.
It operates purely on the survival, instinctual basis, and it's just a sequence of switches.
So Freud would have called that the id or something like that.
Yeah, he would have done. The shadow part, or the shadow, I think, was more the common name for that. Yeah. But certainly the reptilian brain. There's a part of the brain that holds primitive memory, primal memory. And this part of us, most of us, are operating off quite subconsciously most of the time. It's connected to the sense of smell. I'm trying to remember what that's called, but it's right in the centre, right in the root of the brain. And it's these primitive emotive responses which actually are developed at the very early stages of life, because this part of us in the womb is the first 10 weeks, 0 to 10. But then once we're born, this is basically our time as a baby, a toddler, where the very primitive, basic reflexes and responses are starting to be laid down and developed in our neurology. The very basic survival reflexes, for nourishment, for the breast, for protection, for warmth. Very, very simple needs. Not sophisticated, not clever in that sense, just very, very basic. Yeah, reptilian. And I personally believe that this is where the reptilian consciousness is rooted. Whether it's from an external source or an internal source, I feel myself really what we're looking at here is a reflection of our own reptilian nature as it is illumined in the outer universe, as it were. And we have all this idea about conspiracies and the covert governments and all this kind of stuff, but actually that's what's going on inside of us, but to a much higher degree. What you have here within us is a complete dictatorship. It is almost 100% dictatorship. This is like, for most of us, we feel like this aspect of us is like a prison.
How does it get manifest? I mean, it's a collective experience.
Yeah.
So it's something we all share.
It's something we all share, you're right, Heather, yeah. But I believe as we share it and as we express it, we attract it. So there is the counter to that from the universe then that we do pull in.
Because we're all creating it.
Yes, we're all collectively creating it. Yeah. But we all have a reptilian consciousness. And humankind, for the most part, is still operating off that reptilian, fear-based consciousness. For the most part, this is a system of control that is instigated and relies for its continuance upon the emotion of fear. And if you look at most human beings, including probably most of us in this room, most of us are driven very powerfully by this emotion of fear. You know, it has been programmed into us from way, way, way back. But you could say, if you were to follow the evolutionary model, you could go all the way back to the time, even, you know, this planet was inhabited by the reptilians, which were the dinosaurs and those sorts of creatures. Which supposedly, according to the Darwinian theory, this part of us is a vestige from that time. In fact, the baby in the womb develops through all the different stages, the reptilian, mammalian, and human consciousness. So from 0 to 10 weeks, we have the reptilian development, the very primitive development in the womb. And this is where the reptilian brain is laid down. It's where a lot of our instinctual nature is encoded and programmed into us, particularly during that first 2 or 3 years of life.
So where does the mammalian brain come in?
That's in a little while. Yeah,
Further up.
another 2 levels up.
Okay.
Yeah, another 2 levels. We've got the midbrain next, and then we've got the mammalian brain, and then the neocortex. So this part of us, just coming back to the basement, is reptilian in nature. The reptilian brain is very basic. It's running off very basic, primal, instinctual, fear-driven consciousness. And for the most part, we fear this. We do fear this. And people, clients included, enter into this territory with trepidation, if at all. In fact, for the most part, when we're exploring this sometimes during the session, and I had a case even this last week, they're actually fighting while they're wanting to heal. And they're actually fighting because they know they have to go down here and retrieve something, a resource. But they don't want to be confronted by the shadow. They don't want to be confronted by what is fearful in this area. So they want healing, and yet there's a fighting against that in terms of illuminating what's in the depths. And I get this all the time. Clients are always resisting, they're always fighting their own healing processes. It's quite innate, it's quite instinctive. Built into all of us, self-preservation. That's the reptilian brain. So, are we okay on that? Yeah?
I just want to,
Yes,
I
Lucy.
don't really know how to put this question, but if we've come here to use that opposite to find out who we are,
Yes.
then how does the reptilian part of it fit into that? Why are we going against our origins? Why is that here? And why are we, how does, if the reptilian part of it came in to control us, how come we've come down to what came first? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes. Well, my understanding from Vedanta certainly is that as human beings we came first. And we existed on the higher planes of consciousness. Not here on the physical earth, but we were associated with the earth, but on a plane above it, you could say. And then from that place we manifested the inanimate rocks and stones, the amoebas, protozoas, bacteria, plants, animals, mammals, and eventually, as we came down, we actually incarnated as humans. But our journey down, through all the planes of existence, created all the kingdoms of nature here on earth. And our consciousness, you might say, as we were coming down into matter, was the same as the consciousness of the organisms that inhabited the earth. Can you see it? So in a way, we as human beings created this reptilian consciousness. We created the shadow. It's part of a huge game spanning millions and millions of years. But from the point of view of spirit, it's just a blink of the eye. But when we're down here, it just looks like, my God, this has just taken such a long time. And when you think back, 65 million years since the dinosaurs walked the earth, for example. 65 million years. That's a long time ago. You know. But, you know, from a spiritual perspective, that's hardly anything. I mean, Atlantis is considered to be recent history, like yesterday. So you've got to see it from the bigger picture, from the picture of the spirit that's descending into matter, and that this human being is only a fraction of the consciousness of that spirit. And you could say every incarnation is manifesting one fragment or one aspect of that spiritual being, of which there will be thousands of incarnations. So from that perspective, you might say, yes, you could say, well, the reptilian is, in a sense, working against us, but it's not really. It's just reflecting a state that we previously were, which was uninformed, unilluminated. We were like that at one time. You know, as we were differentiating ourselves from Source, we had no idea what or who we were. And now we're discovering it.
Yeah. The point of our constant living and dying is to learn these different parts of our shadow self so we can ascend.
That's what I was just about to get to.
Yeah.
So let me get to that, and then we'll talk about
Okay.
that. Yeah, because the ascending process is much faster than the descending process. In fact, although it seems like we're going really slowly, we're actually going really at quantum speeds, going really fast in terms of the return journey home. Yeah. Marcus, and Nigel as well. Marcus first, maybe?
You said the blueprint's different every time, so if the ascension is triumphant,
Yeah.
then it's a waste of time.
It's a waste of time then. Well, there's no difference in terms of what we are. We are eternally the same. I mean, this is clear. It teaches this in all scriptures. The Bhagavad Gita particularly mentions that you are eternally the same. What changes is consciousness, the awareness of yourself. So each life adds what we call another resource to your consciousness, another aspect of your divine nature that you can taste and realize. And it may take more than one lifetime to fully complete the development of one realization or resource. You can be working on a theme for several lives, in other words.
So I thought you meant that each life is completely different from the last one, as in, you get a different ancestry.
Yes. Yes.
So if it's going to take you a few lifetimes, just trying to work it out.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Well, there are themes that carry through, and you can even be reborn into the same family, into the same patterns over and over again, until you complete a particular realization or revelation, or what we call illumination, until you taste what it is that you're really wanting to experience and taste. When you get that, then there is no longer a need to actually continue with that theme. Then you can change to do something completely different. My understanding of that is it doesn't have to even be restricted to the earth. There are expressions of ourselves that actually can be from other worlds, other planets, other dimensions, other levels. Yeah, it's quite complicated. And we are all of that simultaneously being able to compute and hold it all together from the point of view of spirit. But when we're down here, looking up there and thinking about all of that, it's just beyond our comprehension. Because when we're here, we're just looking through these patterns. This sense of identity, this sense of who we are. This, in a sense, defines who we are. The ego, the personality, the non-self. But what we're looking for is this, and this is the key word here, and it's the key behind the therapy that I do also, it's the resources. Actually, before we go there, Nigel, did you have a question?
Well, yeah, we were talking about the reptilian brain and how we're sort of descended from that. But I thought the Hindu system didn't subscribe to the evolution of Darwin's evolutionary theory.
No.
It doesn't, does it?
No.
So that
Well, it does.
spanner among the works.
Well, it does and it doesn't. I've managed to tease this out a little bit. There are two aspects to evolutionary theory. There's the feminine and the masculine component to evolution. And this is not for today's talk. This will be another talk, probably in September. The Darwinian model, as far as I can understand, as far as I can intuit, is the feminine evolutionary method. It's passive, it's receptive, it's non-dynamic. But there's the dynamic masculine aspect to evolution as well, where consciousness is determining the outcome or creating species, variation or mutations. And that happens too. So it's the combination, as it is in the whole of creation, the whole of reality, all these two components come together, masculine and feminine. So you have the masculine and the feminine forms of evolution interacting and blending the whole time. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, let's come back to this. I don't want to go too far off the subject. It's getting a bit... anyway, resources, that's the key. So resources in this work we call our gems. So if you think about if you were to go into the earth, if you go into a cave, if you were to dig for gold, you would actually find some resources in the earth. The most precious things that we have here on the earth are gemstones and semi-precious stones, metals. So these are considered to be of value in terms of the external mineral kingdom. So the same thing on the inside. What we're looking for really is our gem, or our gems. There's no more space here, but anyway, gems. As they exist inside of us. You hear the expression, don't you? It's a rough diamond, or it's an old gem, or you're a gem. You know, you get these expressions, you know. And really, gem denotes something which is precious, something that is valuable. And it ties in with this idea that what is valuable to us really is the resources that we are digging for, that we are looking for. But the point of this is that we do have to dig. We do have to go down. We do have to go into the shadow. We do have to go into the earth. Now, when I was a Hindu monk, this place was completely taboo because it was considered to be dirty, unclean, impure. We would never go there unless we wanted to contaminate our consciousness. And we used to even use those words. We used to say we're not going to contaminate our consciousness by going into this area here, which is the shadow. We would only go towards the light. But after 8 years of doing this, I was feeling very, very unfulfilled, which is, you might say, a little bit of a strange thing, because the whole modus operandi, the whole purpose of being in an ashram or a temple and going through all that training is to become illuminated, realized and fulfilled. And yet I was actually feeling at times quite depressed. And eventually I had to leave the ashram. It was becoming such a stranglehold on me. It was suffocating me. I couldn't continue in that environment anymore. So I escaped. And since then I've been sort of wallowing around down here. I'm a little overcompensated maybe. Gone a little too deeply into this area. At times feeling like it was a little dangerous even. But anyway, that's another story. Or several stories maybe. But what I was looking for was the gems and for my resources. And I have to say, although the temple did give me some of this, since I've left the temple and since I've left the ashram, I've actually found much more of these gems and resources than I think I would have found through a continuation of that monastic life. Yeah. And now I'm at the point where I'm trying to reintegrate those monastic practices into my daily existence. I'm trying to find a balance. Anyway.
Well, I guess when you come out of that protected environment and faced with that physical reality, as you said in the beginning, then your resources are tested, right?
Yeah, then you're actually having to confront those resources.
You're having to confront reality.
You are, exactly right. You're having to confront reality. Because you're back into the physical universe, as it were, and the physical universe and your subconscious mind are one and the same. This is where a lot of us can't figure out, why it is that we have problems with our body, why certain symptoms, certain issues arise. It's because they're triggered from the subconscious, and the subconscious and the physical are one and the same. The subconscious is constantly being displayed through our physical vessel. We call this a display. We'll get to that in a little while when we get to the animal kingdom. So what do we have down here? We basically have our gems, we have our resources. And this is all tied in with history, with patterns, with what's gone before in terms of our ancestors, what it is that we brought over from previous existences and what we've experienced in this life. So down here we have what we call the record keeper. This is a servant. So rather than working against us, in terms of we're battling with what's going on down here, this part of us is supposed to support us. It's supposed to serve us in terms of our spiritual enlightenment. Why? Because it provides the contrasting opposite, the shadow aspect to the light that allows us then to taste what it is that we really are from that relative perspective. Yeah? You have to define that which is not in order that you can define that which is. Yeah. So this is the record keeper. And what you have down here really is a collection, you might say, of vibrational energies. Certain genes, certain aspects of the genome, certain patterns are going to be triggered at certain times. In fact, there's a whole thing going on right now. Bruce Lipton, I believe he's pioneering this work into something called epigenetics. I mean, we knew about that in this work going back, I don't know, 30 years or more. We knew that it was possible to reprogram a human being. And we knew the DNA was like an open book that's constantly interacting with the environment. I mean, you being here and me being here is reprogramming our DNA. Every second, every moment of every day, depending upon the stimulus from our environment. Certain genes are being switched off, certain genes are being switched on. That's happening all the time in every single cell in your body. It's an amazing thing. When you really think about it, it's incomprehensible. So what we have down here, really, is you might say it could be like a sea. It's like a sea of vibrational energy. A sea of vibration. Why? Because matter vibrates. Physical matter vibrates. We call this the signal. The signal. All this vibration, all this buzzing around, all this busyness gives off a signal. Gives off what in vibrational medicine has been called like a frequency or a resonance. So everything is resonating down here. Everything is vibrating. And everything is interacting with similar vibrations. That's why sometimes we get triggered. We don't know why. Because there's a piece of DNA down here, there's a pattern that then meets a similar pattern in the outer universe in the form of a person or an experience. And that triggers that gene. It triggers that pattern. It brings it alive. And that sends out an energy, a vibration. That vibration is then broadcast out into the universe that then attracts the similar to you. Can you see? It's the law of attraction. The main concept really that I wanted to get over here is that this part of us really is a servant. It serves us. And it's vibrating. It sends out a signal. And that's constantly changing. So quite often we can wake up, and there's this expression I think in England, isn't there at least, that we wake up on the wrong side of the bed. You know, we just get up and we're in a foul mood. Or we suddenly feel a certain way and we have no explanation as to why do we feel like this. It's because something down here has been triggered during our sleep time. Why? Because when we go to sleep, we go down here. We drop into the subconscious realm. What the Hindus would call the astral world. It's the same. It's the same. Okay, how are we doing? There's a couple of things I'm just going to finish off on here. The one thing many years ago when I first heard this, I thought, no, that can't be true, that's not right. That's not right. Because my understanding at that time was that if I study and study and study, if I learn and learn and learn as much as I can, I'm going to somehow elevate myself. And then what I learned from Solheim was a bit of a bombshell. Because he taught me one day that actually what we have down here is our brain and our thinking. So for us guys, because I was thinking, my head, if I get more into my head, I'm going more towards heaven. So that's going to be a good move, right? That's going to be a good direction to go in. But actually, what I really came to have to accept and understand was that it's actually down in the basement. So my thinking and my brain is down here. And if you think about what the brain is, it's basically a vibrational organ. In fact, you can hook it up to, I think it's an ECG machine, is it? Not electrocardiograph, but an electrocephalograph, isn't it, I think? Well, they can monitor the frequencies, the brain waves. In fact, they're developing computer games now, virtual reality games, which I think is pretty cool, where you can actually have this little helmet and visor on. And they're saying very soon you'll be able to control and be in the game just by thinking. Just by thinking you want to walk, yeah, you see, or you want to run, or you want to do something, you haven't got to do it anymore by using a keyboard and a mouse. You can actually just be completely in the game thinking. And these electrodes are actually then moving you through a virtual environment. You can also control things just through the thinking process. They have these little helicopters and these little things that you can control just through thinking. Because the brain is actually emitting a vibration, it's emitting frequencies. Every thought, everything that goes through our brain actually is emitted as a frequency, as a vibration into the universe. And this provides the seed for creativity. It's the seed. If you think of what we have down in the basement and what you put into the dark, it's seeds. In fact, if you think about what you do as a gardener, you have to put the seed into the earth. You have to put it into the ground in order that it can germinate. So down here in the basement is where we keep our seeds. It's where we plant our seeds. It's where we grow our resources. Can you see? And the other thing I discovered that was down in the basement was astrology. And that was a bit of a shock to me as well. Because we're talking about physical bodies, vibrational energy, and the interaction of vibrational energies on a cosmic scale. But it's the same thing that's going on for us personally as is going on in the heavens. And the macrocosm is reflected into the macrocosm, and the macrocosm into the microcosm. It's all to do with vibrational energy.
I don't understand.
Yeah.
The brain is sunk down there in the darkness.
Yes.
And in the subconscious, and with no illumination.
Yeah, the brain isn't illuminated.
But when you say, when you talk about the brain, we were just saying there's a reptilian, mammalian, neocortex.
Yes.
But you're saying what? That the reptilian brain is down there, or the whole brain?
I'm saying the thinking brain. Yeah. Well, the reptilian brain is down there, and I would say actually the whole of the brain is down there.
The whole of the brain?
I would say, yes.
So the neocortex is sunk down there?
Yes, I would say. The neocortex is down here.
That's the most developed part, isn't it?
Yes. But even though the neocortex is very clever because it can construct and create reality, it doesn't know reality. It's not illuminated. And that's again, most clients when they come to see me, they've done a lot of thinking already. I mean, you know, if thinking would have solved the problem, they would have solved it like 20, 30 years ago. But it just doesn't. I mean, people think that they can actually solve their problems through thinking. But actually this is just a machine that was created when we were born. And it actually takes all its cues and all its learning from its history. All the information gleaned along the way. And it's a beautiful machine in terms of orchestrating and managing and organising this level of reality. But anything beyond that, it has no experience of. It can't reference it. Doesn't know what to do. It's in the dark. And I often say to clients, the first test we do with the kinesiology that I do is to test to see if the client's in the dark. And I would say 99% of the time they always are. They're always in the dark in terms of how do I resolve this problem. It's a good place to start. But it can be very frustrating if it goes on for too long. Yeah. So, yeah. So, well, another common pattern with thinking people, and this is what happened to me, is I got very depressed. So I was reading lots of stuff, really getting into things, but I was depressed. And you do find this quite often. Not all the time. I mean, you know, it's not a general rule or anything. But you can find quite clever people can be quite miserable and depressed, and non-illumined, and non-enlightened. In fact, very intellectual people can be very, very unilluminated and unenlightened. Which was a bit of a shock for me going back about 30 years or so, because I was thinking the more I know, the more enlightened I'm going to become. But actually, the more it actually took me down here. The shadow aspect of the basement really is something called what we call the nafsu, which is the shadow aspect of each of the life forces. The shadow here is pride. Pride. Okay. I'm not going to talk with any more length about this in terms of the basement, but you get the general idea. How you doing? Okay. Yeah.
Thinking.
But
Thinking,
the main thing to contact there is the resources you were saying. Is that the,
that's all we're looking for. That's all we're looking for. Yeah, you're right there, Nigel. Yeah, we're looking for our resources.
Resources.
But most of us get locked in the dark. We tend to feel that we're we're prisoners here. Yeah. Marcus?
Are you going to sort of give us some solutions to end this misery?
Yes, yes. Well, as we move up the hierarchy, it'll become apparent. Yes, particularly as we get to this final stage here, which is the noble level. Yeah, exactly. See, what's required here in the basement, first of all, is illumination. Obviously, when I talk about illumination, I mean consciousness. At the level of the basement, consciousness expresses as simply noticing. Noticing. It just notices. But we need to switch on a light. We need to notice our patterns.
Intuition.
Our intuition actually is the next level up, and we're going to get to that in a moment. Yeah. What we actually get from the basement in terms of an awareness, you might say, which is the next level, is to do with this signal. That's why the signal really is the key to understanding why this all exists, because what's being broadcast from the basement becomes the themes in terms of what sets our feelings. We'll get to that in a little while, very soon. But we're all okay with the basement, yeah? Mm-hmm. Illumination is required, and then cleaning follows. So once we've illuminated something, then we can heal it, and only in that order. It's my understanding, and I'm hoping to be proved wrong, but my understanding is we have to illuminate a pattern before we can clean it. And most of us identify too strongly with our patterns, subconsciously. We haven't differentiated them, we haven't illuminated them. We haven't distinguished them from our ego, because this is the ego. Can you see? So we're actually, as it were, separating the patterns away from our identity of who we really are. We're going, actually, this is not me. This is just a pattern. In fact, this is the non-self. And it's actually a servant that actually is helping me to find my resources. Because it's showing me the opposite of what it is that I actually am seeking. And therefore, I can define what it is that I'm looking for. Can you see? Not intellectually, but actually in an experiential way. You can intellectualize it if you like, but you'll be down in the basement again. That doesn't help.
When I meditate, I'm separating myself from that dark, from the basement.
Yes.
And then you can look at it.
Yes, you are.
That's what happens.
You are illuminating.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you're doing. You're distinguishing yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. In Hinduism, they call this neti. Not this, not that.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. You know about this, don't you, Nigel? Neti. You distinguish yourself. You distinguish yourself from the patterns. Because you start to illuminate them. And why? Because you bring illumination from the noble essence into the basement. And basically, you switch on the light. Yeah. It may not be to everything at once. It may be more like a pocket lamp or a torch, illuminating a specific corner of the basement or a particular drawer or cupboard to find a particular pattern. But you are switching on a light. Yeah. We couldn't illuminate it all at once. We'd go mad. And there's more in there, I do believe, than we have the time and the capacity in this lifetime to look at. The library is enormous. Which is why we call the servant that lives down here the record keeper. And the record keeper's job is to pull up the correct patterns at the correct time. So our progress is actually metered, and it's ordered, and it's actually taking us on our design path for this life. Rather than things are just getting illuminated randomly. We can do that, but it creates chaos. We'll get to how we do that and why we do that in a little while when we get to the animal. Okay, let's go up a level. Okay, Adrian.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, okay. So, next level. We're going to run out of space, so we'll see. So do this one in green. Vegetative. Think of the kingdoms of nature. You have the soil. This constitutes our soil, the earth, physical bodies. Out of that comes this vibration, as I was saying, depending upon what vibration is active and current at this time. This is sent out as a signal, and this is then received into the next kingdom, which is the vegetative kingdom. So as we all know, plants are rooted in the soil. They get their nourishment from the earth. So it does the same for us as human beings. We should be rooted deeply into our basement, And for most of us, far too many of us, we're disconnected from this. In fact, many of us spiritual types and sensitive types are far too unrooted. We're ungrounded. We're disconnected. It was the one thing that really hit me when I left the temple, is how ungrounded I'd become. And how I'd have to work at really rooting down deeply and digging for those resources. Becoming more earthy, more practical, more here, more physical. Because we are here. And we chose to be here for a damn good reason. But we need to be rooted. And then we get the signal, we receive the signal from this place that is appropriate to our development. And we receive it here. So this part of us, you might say, is our receptivity. Yeah? Boy, spelling's gone off. Anyway, receptivity. This is the part of us that receives the signal. So what does this mean in physical experience? This basically translates into feelings. Can you see that? The receptive mechanism within us, receiving a signal from the basement, is basically what we would call a feeling. This is not an emotion. Emotions and feelings are different. We're going to deal with emotions at the next level. Emotions don't exist at this level. This is pure sensory data. And at this level, it's all input. Input. So it's feminine in nature. Feminine. Because it's receptive. So the feelings are predominantly feminine. We know that. I mean, intuitively, actually, intuition. I'll get to intuition in a little while because it's more keyed in with this area here rather than what's going on in the basement. Just at this point, we just need to understand that this is all input, input, input. That's all our feelings are. So we're receiving the signal from source. That's input that's coming from within us, from our DNA, from our history, from our past. We're receiving the signals laterally from the world around us, other people, our physical world and our environments. And we're also, hopefully, receiving the signal from source. This is our guidance. This gives us a sense of our purpose. This informs us and directs us. It also heals and illuminates us. This is the signal from source. And we hopefully get that as well. For the most part, however, most people aren't receiving this very well at all. The signal from source. And we mostly exist feeling the signals that rise up from the basement and laterally as they're reflected from the world back to us from the world around us.
When you say feelings and they're not some emotions,
Yeah.
What are they then?
Well, feeling is just sensory information
Right.
that's been received.
You can't name it. You can't name it as an emotion, but it's just a feeling.
And in words, it's a level of awareness.
a sensation.
It's a sensation.
Of some
Yeah,
sort.
it's a
You
sensation.
can't name it necessarily.
Well, the feeling.
Yeah. No. Yeah. The feeling.
I'm not sure. The actual process of feeling or a feeling?
No, a feeling. Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily have a name.
No, because
How you feel it.
Right.
you can imagine feelings are infinite.
Yeah.
Because you
So
can
you
feel any-
something, but you don't know what it is, and you can't name it.
You can't necessarily label it now, but you can feel it. Most of us feel perfectly well what's coming up from here.
I have trouble with feelings and emotions.
Well, we'll get to emotions in a little while, so you just have to hang on, and then we'll distinguish emotion from feeling.
No, it's like sadness. It's a feeling. It's
Oh,
not
no,
an
you put a name
emotion.
to it.
That's a label, yeah. That's human. Which is good. The human does want to label feelings, because the human's job is to label stuff. We'll get to that in a little while as well. Yeah. So we'll jump in ahead a little bit. And we are describing things here in a very compartmentalised way.
Yeah.
So it's not going to make sense until you get the whole picture. Yeah? And even after tonight, it won't be the whole picture, because it's just a taste of a taste. As my teacher says, it's just the scratch on the scratch. It's just really incomprehensible, all this. And there's another talk on Monday that'll actually add another dimension to this after today, if you're interested to come to that as well. But anyway, this is just all input at this level, and that's the point. You are just receiving information. You're being informed about your environment, internally and externally. And that's all that feelings are. And feelings in that sense can be very broad and very wide, because we can find ourselves in many different, well, over many different lifetimes, but many different patterns can be expressed here, and many different basements over different lifetimes, also finding ourselves in many different environments in the world. So what we can feel is enormous. Emotion is very different. We have only maybe 4 or 5 emotions that we operate off, full stop. They're very, very limiting and restricting. It's the next level. But feelings are infinite. Feelings are broad. There's so much sensory information out there. In fact, it can be overload. I have a daughter that is mentally handicapped. And one of her problems is that she can't filter the information that's coming to her from the environment like we can. She has very little filtering. So she gets what's called sensory overload. And she just, freaks out a little bit, gets very angry, agitated, aggravated. And she needs to be taken into a calm, almost like dark space for a little while, so her sensory mechanism can discharge. This is the midbrain, the limbic system. Yeah, the midbrain.
A feeling is your reaction to input, isn't it? It's not something that's something that's coming in.
I'm going to tease that apart even more if I can, Lucy, because the reaction would be the animal reacting to sensory data or a feeling. So there's a feeling that comes in, and then the animal reacts to that feeling. Well, we'll get to that
That's
next.
the emotion.
That then creates an emotion. Yeah, we already see.
Feeling doesn't come in.
Yeah.
Feeling doesn't come in. Does it? Does it come in?
Yes, it comes in through the senses, through the external senses, which we have 5, and we have an internal sense, which is actually all 5 senses on the inside. If any of us have experienced these inner realities, you'll know that you can taste sound or hear light, or on the inside. Yeah, this level of us that corresponds to feelings is all to do with sensory information from our external and internal environments, and we have the same senses on the inside as we have on the outside. So we can see on the inside. There are certain drugs, psychotropics. Drugs, particularly psychotropics, but all drugs that are derived from plant matter, or from the plant kingdom, including alcohol and tobacco. I know you like to drink heavily, don't you, Adrian?
Don't pour any water.
That's said about the bed. But any kind of drug that's taken from the vegetative kingdom is going to change the nature of our vegetative system. And this is our midbrain and our autonomic nervous system.
Do you agree with the dark matter principle, Einstein's dark matter theory, which people are professing to?
What, dark matter and dark energy?
95% of the universe is sort of unknown and it's just shifting through us constantly.
Yeah,
so this
totally.
kind of resonates with that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah, we're only discovering really the illuminative part of the universe, really, which is the masculine components. We've yet to really open to the goddess or the feminine and discover that, in its cosmic form.
Do you think they had a grip on that in Atlantis?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, because they were very much with the goddess energy, and they understood that. And that's where their technology was based upon that. Nissim Haraman's work, which is to do with the divisions of the void.
The singularity.
Yeah, the singularity, and how you divide the void geometrically. Yeah, which is all feminine.
Sure.
Yeah, it's feminine. So, but we haven't developed that technology. We haven't developed that in our awareness collectively yet as a species. We're much more with the idea that stars are bright and we need rockets to go to planets, and it's very masculine.
That's what NASA.
Yes. Masculine. Yeah.
Exploding things to
exactly
shoot them.
Yes.
Phallic symbols.
Phallic symbols blasting off into space. Yeah, and all that. Yeah. But this is the feminine universe, so this would correspond, as you would say, with this dark element. What in Hinduism they call Kali energy, Kali or Durga. Yeah, and Durga really, if you were to translate that into English, would be the prison keeper. So she would be the creator of the prison of the universe, which is dark. It's always portrayed as dark. So it's dark matter. Yeah. So here we have feelings, data in, sensory information. So this part of us can in a way, develop a field of energy of its own. We can have what we would call in this work an element of seduction associated with our feelings and sensory input. So we can become seduced by these feelings and sensory inputs. Can you see? We often are. We're often taken away. We're often seduced, as it were, by what we feel. Women more than men. that's a general rule, but not necessarily.
Are you sure?
Well,
You mean like pleasure and things like that?
yeah.
Yeah.
Pleasure, sensuality.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. This is a sensuality. Because this is feminine, it would correspond more with an expression through the feminine psyche than it would through the male psyche, which would be more down here in the basement, to be honest, with their cerebral thinking brain. So that's why I believe, and I have this theory, that there's always more women than men that go to workshops, that go for therapy, that go for healing. And I would say it's true. Of my clients, I would say 90% of them are women. 10% men. Maybe 15. But the vast majority of individuals or people that come to see me for healing work are women. We'll get to that in a minute. Sensuality. And the reason why is because this is where we seek to be nourished. It's our feelings primarily that should nourish us. Think about it. This is where we are nourished. Look at a plant. Look at a tree. Anything. It has to be nourished in order that it can grow, germinate, develop to its full potential. All plants have to be nourished by the soil upon which they live. And as I said earlier, we're all born with different qualities of soil. Some of us are quite arid, some of us are quite clay-like, some of us are maybe quite sandy, rocky soils, some of us are maybe quite fertile, sort of tropical forest type soils. And you see there's different qualities of soil depending upon the inheritance down here, which would grow a particular quality of vibration, which would feel like a particular type of vegetation. We had to do this when I was studying this many years ago, actually going back about 25 years when I started with this. We had to actually go into stillness and visualize with our mind our mineral, our soil. And then we had to then come out of that and be our, like you have to do at school, doing the, what do they call those classes? It was like drama class you had to go to. You had to be a plant. That was growing out of that soil. And then an animal that was then feeding off that vegetation that would support a human. You see, this is the hierarchy. It naturally appears in nature. But we had to actually animate and do this. It was crazy. But anyway, I discovered that I was a carrot. So not very glamorous, is it?
Colourful.
Yes.
Better than a turnip.
You can see it in you.
Can you see that I'm a carrot, yeah? It's the yellow pigment. All right. So this is an area where we can be seduced, where we can be taken in. And quite often we are. And it's associated, as I say, with drugs, psychotropics, things like ayahuasca. If you think about these things, they're all taken from the plant kingdom. So they catalyze us at this level. Catalyze, it's like they augment this level. And I'm going to get into explaining that right now. The reason is that if you imagine what I've drawn here is what I've drawn is a very nice house with vibrations coming up from the basement that we're kind of tuning into. But the ability to tune in can extend beyond your own personal basement. Can you see that? So in other words, this level can go very wide. And we would call that sensitivity, because you're tuning in to different vibrations that then live outside of you. In other words, we're tuning into other people and into their basement. And we're tuning into other environments. And if you go really wide, you actually become psychic. This is psychic ability here. It's the ability then to tune into very refined and very subtle energies that are everywhere and all around us, but they're invisible to our five senses. But a lot of the drugs, especially psychotropics, tune us in just like that. They just lock in that frequency. And bang, we have that particular experience. But it's catalysed purely by that particular type of vegetation. And if we were to take a different drug, we would have a different experience. There may be similarities, because they all belong to the plant kingdom, but they would all tune us slightly differently, different frequencies.
And you're saying that's not a good thing, because you're sort of tuned just in one channel.
Yeah, well,
I mean, it might be illuminated. Ayahuasca, for example.
Yeah, the tendency is, and you're absolutely right, Nigel, the tendency is that this area here, this psychic area, and I may have upset a few people with this, I don't know, but anyway, appears to be spiritual, but is not. And actually seduces us and takes us lateral. Can you see? It takes us lateral because we've got to go lateral to enter into those realms. Because we've got to tune in to something that isn't already inside of us in terms of the basement. We have to go lateral. They open us up very broad and very wide. And sometimes it can be a problem how to close down again. It's just, you know.
Why do we have to go lateral?
Well, you do if you take psychotropics.
Well, because...
Or if you develop your sensitivity, you would go lateral. Because you're actually tuning into frequencies and vibrations which are outside of your basement. Can you see? Which means they have to be lateral of you.
In my experience of psychotropics, it's more a case of analysing your own personality and sort of uprooting your own conscious, rather than a broad spectrum of. It's very personal.
It can be, yeah, because it can actually bring us illumination down here. It can do. It can take us off with the pixies. It can. Some people do.
Sure.
Yeah, it can happen.
But then so can spirituality.
Yeah, also, because that also can widen us.
Coffee.
Yeah.
Or sex.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to say, there's no judgment here. There's no this is bad or this is good. This is just a perception of reality. That actually quite a lot of the time we'll actually mistake what is maybe spiritual for actually what is psychic. And we get confused between the psychic and the spiritual realms. And what we've had is a psychic experience. We've opened up and tuned into something really which is astral in nature. But not necessarily which is coming from the divine source. Although it may feel like that. And it may be that to some degree. I mean, there are shades of grey in this. And this is the interesting thing about this. This is an area which is always in flow. It's shades of grey, whereas this is on and off. This is just constantly flowing. It never stays still. Because you're never going to stop tuning into a vibration. You're going to flow from one to another, to another, to another, and this goes on endlessly. You're always flowing with this. And it's the nature of this to be rhythmical, to be flowy, to be feminine in its expression. Yeah. Also, it's dualistic. If you think about our sensory environments, internal and external, we have the yin and the yang. We have the possibility for hot and cold. Good vibrations and bad vibrations, you could say. Yeah. Whether they're coming from here or whether they're coming from some other experience. And there's no judgment on this at all. But it is quite often that we actually seek these experiences because we're not able to, as it were, really root or to really get down here and clean what's going on down here. Because what is here, if it remains here, will irritate us, will aggravate us, will disturb us, until such time as we bring illumination to it. And I think for some individuals, psychotropics and the use of drugs and things like this can be useful for perhaps a short period of time. It can be useful. And it has proved to be enormously useful, I think, in some cases.
The danger is to use it as a crutch.
Danger if you use it as a crutch.
And then you come
Yeah.
to rely on it for...
I would say. Yeah. I think it's true with most things. It can be useful for a while, and then it's time to see when it's outlived its usefulness. Yeah. Anyway, these things are left to the individual to decide. But my understanding of this is that basically what we are doing there is we're tuning in to different frequencies.
Yeah.
And these frequencies are catalysed depending upon the vegetative substances that we ingest. And we enter into that astral realm of that plant. It's what's called the template reality. Are you familiar with this template? Every species that lives on this planet has a template that covers the whole planet. Even if there's just one flower living in one corner of the desert, it'll have a template that covers the whole of the planet. It's a template reality. So every plant, every animal has a template.
And what is the template?
The template is the blueprint for that consciousness. It's consciousness. When you go into these things, if you look into psychotropics and you have these experiences, you'll understand that you're actually travelling inside of consciousness. And there is a consciousness, almost an awareness that's watching you as you're watching it. This is the consciousness or the template level of the reality of that species.
Are you familiar with Rupert Sheldrake in his
Oh, yes.
back morphogenetic?
Yes, morphogenic fields, yeah.
Yeah, so that sounds similar to what you described.
I say it exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't think you would call it
A template.
of the earth.
Yeah.
It'd be more sort of local.
Yes,
and
there
more
are.
habitual.
Yes, there are localized fields, collective consciousnesses, I would call it,
Yeah.
that exist locally. But just in respect to species that inhabit the earth, my understanding is that there's a template that actually envelops the whole earth. But there are collectors of consciousness that exist, like, villages, communities, groups, societies, religious organizations.
Islands of monkeys.
Yes, yes. Yeah. So that's all here. So this is all at this level. Now, I remember some years ago when I was doing this in Norway, a lady said, "Well, where's all the chakras? Is there a chakra here and a chakra here and a chakra here? Where's the chakras?" Yeah. Well, if you think about where the chakras are, basically, if we expand this beyond our physical body, we enter into our subtle envelope, our subtle realms, as we enter into the psychic realms, as we go lateral. So all the chakras and all the nadis and all the subtle energy channels, the acupuncture channels, are all within this field of energy here. This is the realm of chi. And it's the realm of subtle energies. We call this the field. But it includes the chakras. They're all there. At the level of our vegetative system. They are part of our sensory mechanism. Because they are receivers of consciousness at different levels. They are tuners. Different antennae that are tuning into different frequencies. That's what they do. And they tune us in.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
The root chakra is not in the basement.
No, all your chakras are here. But certainly that would be connecting you to this.
Yeah.
There is an energy that actually connects into the earth here, which is the Kundalini energy, which is associated with the root chakra. But the Kundalini meets the root chakra here, in your body, at the level of your vegetative system, because you receive it. It's receptive, again. You're receiving it from the earth. Or you awaken that within Kanda. Kanda is a space right back here near the sacrum, where the Kundalini lies in 3.5 coils, dormant, waiting to be awoken. But it is connected to the earth Kundalini as well. Yeah.
The snaky reptile.
The snaky reptile thing, that's the one, yeah. Yeah.
Right at the bottom.
How
Yeah.
do you wake it up?
How do you awaken your Kundalini?
Are you familiar?
Yeah. Well, you would waken it up by actually creating the polar opposite up here in the medulla oblongata. So it's a magnetic pull that awakens that. So this medulla center is associated with the third eye. So you would do things like spinal breathing pranayama, yogic exercises, things like this that elevate your consciousness and bring awareness here. And that will then give a pull or a tug, as it were, to the Kundalini energy that will naturally then awaken. Otherwise, you'd have to artificially do that. Things like psychotropics, for example, awaken the Kundalini momentarily. Yeah. Sometimes it doesn't go all the way back. You can get stuck.
It needs to go back.
It does. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it needs to go back. Well, after a drug or a drug-induced, but if someone was actually developing it during the natural course of their life by elevating their consciousness, which is the Shiva center, Shakti would naturally rise.
The Shakti energy.
The Kundalini Shakti. Yeah. It's the undifferentiated feminine. We think of the undifferentiated masculine in this culture as the oneness that we're all looking to go to, the Advaita culture, the Advaita philosophies from the Indian societies. The oneness. Yeah? So that's the oneness really that you could ascribe to the masculine aspect of the divine. The feminine also has a oneness, which is the unified field of the life force energy, which comes up from the earth. So the feminine energy rises up, the masculine energy descends down. cosmically as well as inside of our spine. It's what the yogis were doing, this is what the yogis teach, and it's the mixing of the two, or the meeting of the two, that creates enlightenment within our physical body. So Kundalini goes all the way up and meets Shiva here, but Shiva equally goes all the way down and meets Shakti down here. In fact, one of the greatest ways actually to pacify Shakti is to get Shiva off his butt and send him down, rather than always trying to stimulate Shakti to rise, which is what traditionally we've always done, because it's the masculine model. Is that the masculine actually calls the feminine. But the masculine can also go down, and that pacifies Shakti, calms Kundalini.
There's a union.
It's a union, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a meeting of consciousness at that level.
I'm curious to know why it needs to come down. Surely the union would be a union, and therefore whole.
Well, the ideal scenario is that Shakti comes all the way up, and then activates us here at this centre here, the third eye, and then the third eye, the Ajna centre, regulates the opening of what's called the Sahasrara centre. So Kundalini should rise up the spine to the point of the medulla oblongata here at the base of the skull, and then after that, then it opens you to enlightenment, to your true nature. It's pure life force energy, that's what Kundalini is. Undifferentiated, unmoulded energy that can be moulded into any form. Quantum physics is getting into this now. And my understanding is that quantum
shape-shifting is all that. Sorry to interrupt you.
yeah, I don't know if it's what shape-shifting is about, but it could well be, yeah, because my understanding is, and this is just me, is that we are creating this reality all the time. And quantum physics basically says that actually there's no separation between the observer and that which is being observed. Yeah. So we're constantly creating. What we're looking at and what we're creating with our eyes and with our senses is happening spontaneously at a subconscious level. And I believe that Kundalini is involved in this process of creation in its dormant state. Anyway, as we're going off the track here a little bit, that's actually one of the talks I'm going to do actually in September is about this, about the ascending feminine energies and the descending masculine energies. And it talks a lot about, we're going to a lot about Kundalini there. Okay, how are we doing here? How are we doing for time? I set my watch off to get repaired, so I have no idea the time now.
20 to 9.
29, okay, we've got 20 minutes to go through the next 3 levels. Okay, so I'm going to talk really fast now, about 3 times the speed of what I've been talking already. No, I'm just joking. We better move on. Are we all okay with that?
Excuse me.
Yeah, we call this level of our consciousness the provider. It provides for us. And really what we're looking for here, ideally, is for this frequency, this vibration here, which is from above. When we actually receive this frequency as a feeling, we call this the feeling for life. This enlivens us. It gives us joy. It gives us bliss. And it gives us our guidance. This is this feeling. So we're actually source to our guidance really is through our feelings rather than through our mind. Because we receive it rather than we figure it out. But it's got to come from above. Okay. Animal. Okay, animal. What's the animal about?
Instinct.
Yeah. The animal primarily is an instinctual creature that's also habitual in nature. It's primarily reactive, if you think about an animal. And it's geared towards survival. That's what the animal's job is. Survival. This corresponds to the mammalian part of the brain. This is where we often get stuck. And the reason why we get stuck is because the animal, in this system of vibration, here we have the, what do you call it, the antenna, the broadcasting of the signal from the soil. We have the receiver. The animal is the amplifier. And that's why it's often referred to as power animal, especially by the shamans. Power. This is where we have our power. It amplifies basically what the receiver or the feelings receive. This creates an emotion. But there's a distinction here. Because the animal can't go broad, can't tune into anything. Its only concern is for survival. So those feelings which are relevant or which are filtered through a survival filter are called emotion. So my understanding of this is that emotions are amplified feelings which are primarily survival based. Only. And that's why there's only a small collection of them. We might at the max have about 5 or 6 emotions that we predominantly operate off, whereas we can have an infinite amount of sensory input. But the animal can't get its teeth into most of that. Its only concern is for survival. So it will filter everything else out and focus in and zoom in and zero in on those vibrations and that information, that data that's coming in that appears to be a threat to its survival. Because the animal is a territorial creature. It'll only want to exist within the territory that is familiar to it, that is knowable. So this is the knowable. Anything outside of that is considered to be a threat. It's considered to be a threat. Yeah? It's coming from the animal. Yeah? And therefore we have with the animal our defense mechanisms. Things like our immune system and things like that. So this is defense. Territoriality. Protection, basically. Can you see that? Because it's about survival.
Our adrenals are there, yeah?
Our adrenals are there, along with the thyroid.
Thyroid.
Yeah. In fact, the endocrine system is predominantly an animal-based system. It's a survival strategy, the adrenals, the endocrine system. It chemically works at this level. Because this is to do with chemistry. This is to do with physiology. But the animal is as if it were is orchestrating that. Yeah. What else about the animal? We do know this. Everything about the animal is out, is expressed.
Sounds like the ego to me.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? But is it? Is it just taking what is the ego and amplifying it and expressing it? So therefore it appears to be the ego. Or is it the ego? And I think it's both. I think it's both. Because it's taking what's in the soil and it's been received by the feelings and it's amplifying it, but in itself, it has an investment in maintaining the status quo, in defining who we are, in terms of this is our limited self. It's the animal, really, that gives us our sense of boundary, our sense of self. And also, in a positive sense, our sense of embodiment or presence. It's like being in your skin.
Personality.
Yeah, personality to some degree, because you're going to feel this. The personality is very much expressed, because this is expression. This is dynamism. This is action. It's masculine. Can you see? So in that respect, yeah, it is a part or an aspect of the ego. In fact,
Flamboyant?
charismatic, I think would be more the correct word for the animal. Charismatic. Flamboyant, I would say, would be a mixture of animal and vegetative. So this is where we have charisma and charismatic leaders and charismatic speakers and such like. So we use our charisma sometimes, yeah, in that way. But really this part of us really has the power, it's the amplifier, it's the amplification, and it expresses. And it creates what we call in this work the display. Because you see, what's in the subconscious and what's in the shadow is sending out a signal, whether you like it or not. That's being received by your feelings and then amplified and expressed as a behaviour, as a capability out into the world. So that's displayed. It's like a leopard always shows its spots. Can you see? This relates to our skeletal muscular system, but also to our skin, because it defines us in terms of our boundary. And this is where the ego definition comes in, because that definition is from the animal, because it gives us this limiting sense of ourself. This is broadband, this is narrowband. Yeah? Why? because it's to do with, well, that's a PC term really.
A landline, or a landline. So broadband or a landline.
Yeah, so this is like the super information highway, whereas this is just the old dial-up network, that we used to be on in the 1990s.
Is that when you say it displays? Is it symptoms as well?
Yes.
That the animal, right?
Yes, it displays symptoms. It creates the display. Because you see, this is our private little world. Who knows what we're feeling? Who really knows what's going on inside? Except you. But that's private to you, you see. But when the animal gets its teeth into it, and its claws and its talons, it does something with it. It expresses it. It amplifies it. Gives it energy, power, and expresses it out into the world. You get rashes, skin problems, conditions. This is the display.
Tennis,
Tennis, yeah.
football.
Yeah, all of that. Well, actually, more than that, really. Western society, Western culture. It's a get up and go. This part of us is goal-orientated. Success is the key, because survival. The more you can succeed, the more you can reach your goals, the higher probability that you can survive and reproduce. So we have here is sex, and pheromones, and the whole area of bonding. Animals bonding.
So you're equating the human level with the animal level here? Right?
No, it's just that we have dropped down into the animal level as humans. For the most part. This is not human. This is animal.
Well, you're talking as if it is.
Well, it does appear like that. I haven't mentioned human yet, though. But yes, you're right.
It's another level.
Yes, the next level up. Yeah. But we are talking as if this is human, because most of us recognise this as daily life. We've got to work. This is work. We've got to get out there. We've got to do some action. We've got to make a contribution. We've got to be active. And if we're not, we're going to be vegetating, right? We're going to drop down and become a couch potato, down at this level or something, yeah? And if we drop down even further, down here, there's just darkness and death. We feel depressed down here. And then we're just left with our thinking mind to help us out of the dark. You see? But up here, at least we're dynamic and we're expressive. At least we can get angry. That's why, an emotion like anger is a whole lot better than something like just inert and depressed. You see?
Where do we want to be? And where could we be spending time? And is that helpful, being an animal?
Well, the animal, like all of these forces, all of these kingdoms, is a servant. In fact, we call it the servant. So here we have the record keeper, here we have the provider, this is the servant. So it absolutely has to serve us. But the animal usually gets the upper hand. It's usually dominant over us. It stands above us as human beings and dictates to us. And then we fall into habitual, instinctual, emotional, reactive patterns of being. We're going to do this on Monday. It's called the disorganized house. None of us have a very neat little house like this. Yeah. It's like this is taken out, it's put up here, the human's down here somewhere, the basement even can be up here in heaven. It can be a whole jumble. We'll look into that on Monday. That's the first half of Monday's talk. This is this disorganized house. What we're describing here is the ideal scenario. What we call the hierarchy of servants. But for most of us, these are masters. So when this takes over, we're taken over by wanting to be powerful, wanting to be successful, wanting to be driven. But what can the animal do that none of the other life forces so far can do? This part of us can attack. This part of us can violate. Because it's outward. And particularly if it meets another animal in the jungle that's not as powerful as it is. That other animal can be lunch. So the animal can actually, in a sense, it can actually take us into territory that actually is totally inappropriate for us to go. It can violate someone. And we can even do this in the name of healing. Healing is very much a process down here. But up here we have, my teacher Salihin taught me this. I think it's true. Nowhere else to write it here, but up here we have aspects, or maybe you could say shamanism, which uses the animal force as a modus operandi, as a means of actually affecting a change or a healing. But we have to be very, very careful with healing at this level, because we can actually violate. We can actually, at this level, manipulate other people and energy. We can manipulate, and we can be incredibly manipulative.
The magician.
Yeah, the magician. Exactly, yeah. And sometimes this passes under the radar as a form of healing, that we can actually manipulate the client, we can eradicate their symptom picture, but we haven't illuminated anything in the basement. So we've denied them access to their resources, which is what they're here to find in the first place. Can you see?
How does the shaman use animals to do that?
No, I'm not saying a shaman would do that.
Oh, right.
But I'm saying the shamanism is more akin than most healing modalities to the animal, because they use something called the power animal as a protector, as a guardian with their work. Yeah.
Sometimes they can use animal noises to scare the person they're healing to get into layers.
Yeah, they can.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went to see a shaman some years ago, and she was shouting into my feet. Get out! Get out! It's like, oh God, I've got some demon or something inside me. But actually it helped. I don't know. I did feel better after that. But I couldn't say exactly what she did, but she did actually put a force into me.
Just scared the hell out of you.
Yeah. Yeah, probably.
Passion, isn't it? That gets you out of the stuckness.
It does.
If you scare someone, it
Yeah.
opens them up.
And that's why we need the animal as a servant, because the animal will give us the dynamism to actually change. We need the animal for change. You can't change without the animal. You know, basically what happens here at the feeling level is you just get growth. If you think of what happens in a garden, if you don't tend to it, if you don't prune it, if you don't look after it, cultivate it, it becomes a jungle. Everything just grows and grows and grows and grows and grows.
So they all have to synergise in a fluid state.
All the life forces.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, the animal needs to take care of the emotions and the feelings.
Yeah.
It does. It needs to prune the garden from time to time. It needs to take out the garbage from time to time.
Use the energy and...
Yeah, you need to use it positively as a servant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No wonder it's so difficult being a human being.
Well, it actually gets simpler when we get to the human level. Well, on the noble level. You'll see in a minute.
Can the animal actually sort of refrain, and is that where the power comes? From
The animal
refraining
can.
from
It can be
things?
refrained
That's
by the
still an
human.
animal.
But only an obedient animal will do that.
And you what?
An
Obedient?
obedient animal, yeah.
Ah.
If an animal is not obedient to the human, then the animal is trying to get the better of the human. And quite often that is the case, that the animal is running the show. With a lot of my clients, it's certainly the case.
That's egoic though, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's egoic. Yeah. Because the animal will define a very limiting boundary. It gives you a sense of self, it gives you a sense of being in your skin, as I was describing earlier. This is me. This is what I'm about. You know, I believe in this. This is who I am. This is the colour of my skin. These are my spots. These are my stripes. This is what I am. This is what I'm displaying. Yeah. Yeah, this is the type of animal that I am. And likewise, the animal will actually give us our physiology. It will give us our posture, our stance, and our gait, our locomotive mechanism. You see, because the animal energy will express in that way. You know, you can see if someone's got a bit of a sickly animal if they're walking around like this. You know, and someone that's a bit upright and there's a bit, you know, you can see their animal, you know, is very much there. But this force, when I experience this, is majestic. It's wonderful. But because it has power, and because it can manipulate, and because it can violate, it often does get the better of us. Often.
Or like will create unhealthy scenarios to other people maybe.
Say again, Marcus.
Will
Sorry.
create unhealthy scenarios of dominating other people.
Yes,
or-
controlling, dominating,
Yeah.
yeah, all of that. It's all instinctual, reactive, emotively survival based. If you look at the core of it. Now most of this is established by the time we're, 5 or 6 maybe? Most of those animal survival strategies, mechanisms, are very much laid down in our neurology from our family in early childhood. And we keep applying those same patterns, because it's a creature of habit, over and over again, to every situation that we encounter from there on. The same animal strategy, the same response, the same reaction. It's programmed in. It's habitual. And it happens in the split of a second. You suddenly respond, you suddenly say something, or you suddenly express a certain behaviour.
Then you go down to the basement. Then it
Well,
gets
yeah.
locked in the basement as habit, right?
Yeah. Well, it gets held at the animal level as habit, but yeah, it can actually then reinforce the pattern. It reinforces the pattern that's being received and amplified. Can you see? Yeah. It's the animal actually that mostly turns the light off down here.
Yeah.
Because it's the animal that hides stuff, the animal that's camouflaged, the animal that's elusive.
You go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the animal quite often goes off with the light.
No thanks.
Yeah, don't go there. It's outside of my territory, it's outside of my ken, it's outside of my field of knowledge or experience.
But it's also risky though, isn't it, to delve into that, because it can unleash, because like you said, it's like one of those spring-bound worms in the box that can sort of unleash a load of other stuff with it.
Yeah, you don't know what basically you might meet or encounter down here.
Yeah.
But that's why you always have to go in with guidance and with integrity, and that comes from above. Always it comes from above. So as long as we're guided from above, then we're always safe in terms of exploring the basement. It's when we try and go in here with our ego, which involves the animal usually, because it's the animal that says we can fix things. And I can fix myself. And if you're a healer, you can fix other people.
I've noticed you put a pointed roof on the top of your house.
Yeah,
It's
well,
nothing to do with the Illuminati, is it? Or
no. Sadly
I'm
not.
sorry, I'm trying to ruin the ending.
Yeah, no, that's all right. It's not to do with the Illuminati, no. But you can see where the word comes from, illumination. But anyway, yeah. The animal. Okay, how are we doing with that?
Does the animal
Yes, sir.
create disease in the body?
It can do, yeah. Because you see, we can exhaust and deplete the animal. And then we can end up with depletion conditions and depletion syndromes. And in this society, it's very, very common that we do drive the animal too hard for too long.
So, for example, in the vegetative plex, you've got the chi energy.
Yeah.
Then the energy, I guess, forms in the meridians in the point.
Yes.
And then what am I trying to say? And then I guess the animal kind of directs that.
It can block and it can open that because it can manipulate energy. So absolutely right. But really the chi isn't an animal force as such. It actually just prepares the body for action.
Okay.
It gets the body robust and healthy so it can fight or flight. So it gives us the resources that we need should we need to move and act. But it actually doesn't act. Although some Chinese people, they can actually start to manipulate, I think the Chinese more, the chi with an animal force as well, because they can project it. But it takes a lot of practice. We'll get into this on Monday as well. It's what I call the holographic house. Every level of the house has every other level of the house within it. So within the vegetative kingdom, you have the vegetative animal force. Vegetative animal. Within the animal kingdom, you have the animal vegetative force. And they're different. But you have every level of the human house inside every level of the human house. It's a holographic model. But we don't want to get into that now, you just want to get the basic idea into your head. Yeah, we'll do that on Monday a little bit. Marcus, you had another question, was it?
I was just saying, do you mind if I can have a cup of tea?
Oh yes. Let's take a quick 2-3 minutes because then we'll do the last two levels.
Okay.
Great. All right, we're away. I think we're back. I look like I could do with a shave. Anyway. All right. must use a mirror more often. Right. Guys, right. Blimey. So looking very animal-like. Right. Are we okay with this? Yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Ready for the next?
The next instalment.
Yeah.
Okay, this is where it gets really tricky. We're going to use blue. What defines a human? Now, when I say that,
Upright.
it's none of this.
Conscious.
I was saying.
Awareness.
Okay, yeah, but we've got awareness at every level of the house.
Altruism.
Altruism, yeah, okay.
Gets in there.
That's the first time I've had that. Yeah, we'll pop it in over here, yeah. Altruism, compassion. Okay, compassion. Yeah.
But an animal can't reflect on its own experience, can
That's the key. You got it.
it? Which
Reflection.
is conscious.
Reflection, yeah. The human is reflective. We have the capacity, in other words, to become self-aware. Self-awareness. But usually, if we were to look in the context of this model, that would imply we're aware of our lower kingdoms. We are aware of this territory. So the human has the capacity for what in German I think is called the Gestalt. And it's the overview. And primarily, its instrument, you might say, is what we would call vision, be it on the inside or the outside. The vision. It's the human that can see what's going on in the lower kingdoms, animal, vegetative, soil. It has the capacity to do this. The metaphor we use in the context of this work is the metaphor of an eagle. An eagle on the ground is much like a vulture. It's just picking at the carrion. It can't actually see its prey. It can't actually see its nest. It can't actually find its food. It's just picking on the earth. And some of us are a little bit like that in our humanity. We tend to be a bit vulture-like. We pick away at things. But ideally, it needs to be like an eagle. So it can rise above the mountains or the desert plain, and it can survey its territory. From that position and from that place of seeing, which is high up, it can actually find its prey. It can find its way back to its nest. It can find a mate. It can find suitable food. And it can navigate through its territory. So that's why we use the metaphor of an eagle, because we need that elevation in order that we can truly see the big picture, get the overview. And this brings in the idea of altruism and compassion, because we get the human or the humanitarian view. That we are not in this for ourselves. We're not just about surviving. We are part of a collective, we are part of a group called humanity. Yeah? And there's more than me here at stake, basically. Yeah. And we can extend and see, and our vision can go beyond ourselves and can accommodate another scenario or another idea. Which is the other aspect of what defines us as human, because as humans we can be educated.
And imagination.
Yeah. Imagination. We can be educated, yeah. So we can learn. And we also tend to label. That was something that came up, I think, a little earlier with Sarah. I think you mentioned something. We tend to label, which creates language. That's what it is. Language is just a collection of symbols that actually ascribe meaning to things, but not the things themselves. Obviously, it's a language, it's a label. Yeah, what else?
Creative?
Yeah, bang on the money. Well done. Creative, yeah. We have, as human beings, the ability to create. What does this mean in this model? It basically means that we can reseed our basement. Remember, ideas and thinking are down here. So creativity, in a way, starts with a thought that then becomes a feeling, that then translates into an expression or an action that becomes a reality, that the human then reflects upon and sees. Reflection and seeing. But we are creative. We can actually mould or create our reality. We call this the weaver. Now there's a problem with that. Although it's a good thing, because we can create and we can see our own reality, there's a problem with the weaver, there's a problem with this. Because we can actually see in ourselves realities which are not suitable for us. Can you see?
Surely they could be influenced by the basement.
They would be, yeah. They would be. There's a tendency, there's a pattern for that being expressed in the basement. And we would call this delusion, or madness, or psychosis. They live at the human level. the ability, in a way, to enter into realities which are not appropriate for us. Self-created realities a lot of the time. Yeah. Yeah. Can you see? We can weave our own fabric. We can actually cut our own cloth, but it may not be correct and appropriate for us. That's why this human part of us can very much mislead us. It can create mayhem. In fact, it does. A lot of the creations that we have in the world are not healthy for human existence. What to speak of any other organism? You know, we are, in a way, we're dangerous.
But we're culturally trapped in our basement, aren't we? It's been a sort of institutionalised,
That's right.
locked basement, basically.
It has been, yeah. We have. Yeah. And we haven't had the vision to really see beyond that as a species, in some ways, which comes from truly being a human, which includes the leaders, because the leaders are mostly down here in the animal. And then if you ever watch the House of Commons, it's like a Punch and Judy show. It's just laughable. I can't believe these guys are actually running the country.
Just like a normal primate hierarchy.
It is. It's hard. It's squabble and fight and get the upper hand, and who's the leader of the pack, and you know who's going to get
Throwing dung,
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
exactly. It's just animal. There's hardly any human content there whatsoever. It's incredible. So this is our tendency that we can actually cut our own cloth. We can actually weave our own weave. And we can step into that and believe that this is our identity, this is who we are. We can actually believe this is who we are, and it's not. We call these things doppelgangers, but they can be other identity issues. You've heard of doppelgangers?
It's like a
Double self, yeah. It's an image of the self that we kind of then merge with and then live through. An image of the self. So we can create these identities. This is who I am. You know, I'm a postman. You know, I'm a plumber. I'm a builder. I'm homeless. I'm a bum. I'm a politician. These are all just human fabrications and creations. Nothing to do with actually who we really are.
It could be just a trauma from the basement that's sort of not being cleared and it's just manifesting.
Usually it is, Marcus, yeah. Yeah, a lot of our identity programming comes from down here.
Yeah.
And the predispositions for that are in the family line. Yeah. That's why the Hindus, you know, they evolved this system called the caste system. It basically says, you know, as you're born, you shall forever be in that station in life.
Right.
Which is an animal way of doing spirituality, by the way. Because it's the animal that likes to have the definition of the pack,
Yeah.
or the herd, you know, like an animal.
We call it class, don't we?
A class system, yeah. So that can often be down here. This is an inherited quality. That as you have this, as your father and your mother is, so are you. And their characteristics and their qualities come through. And also the opposite. There's a tendency here for mother and father to be good human beings. Then we can also blossom maybe here as well, because we have that pattern as around resources, a quality that we inherit. Because as well as baggage down here, we have some good stuff as well that we can draw upon from our ancestors. Yeah, good resources. So if they do a good job, we also inherit that. Yeah, it's not all bad news. Okay, anything else? Human. Have a look. Oh yes, the most important thing. Choice. Humans make choices.
Planning as well.
Planning, yeah. We plan. We can strategize. Although that's a little bit animal, isn't it? It's kind of like a human-animal thing in terms of a strategy. But yeah, I know what you mean.
Free will.
Yeah, we have free will.
Perceive the future.
Perception, yeah. Vision.
I suppose that's
Yeah, yeah. But choice, I want to come back to that. Choice is very important. Gives us well, synonymous with that is responsibility. We're responsible because we can make choices and we have free will. But the ultimate choice we can make is the choice to surrender, which is a human quality. That's where we started today's talk, actually. Humans always surrender. Humans are always surrendering. It's just that we usually surrender to what's beneath us, to the animal, vegetative, and mineral kingdoms. We have the choice to also surrender to that which is also above, what we call the noble self. That's not a choice that a lot of us exercise a lot of the time. We normally go down here to one level or another, often looking for that which is only available here. But we think we can find it through knowledge and understanding, or we think we can find it through going lateral, or we think we find it through success and endeavour. But actually we can only ever find it if we truly surrender to that which is above. That's the only way. And that's surrender appropriately placed. Any other form of surrender is a mis-surrender. And it's usually in this work, when we're dealing with clients, we're really finding out how it is that they have surrendered inappropriately, what it is they bowed down to within them. Quite often, it's something here which is a powerful feeling or a powerful emotion. Quite often. Or a pattern in the basement that's become powerful. Okay. I think we did quite well with the human. Let me just check we haven't missed anything before we move on. Oh, the neocortex, we already know that. One other thing. The human has the ability to mimic. Actually, it's also an animal quality, in a way. But we can mimic, we can pretend. We can be charitable, kind, caring people. But we're actually just putting on the front, we're putting on the face, we're wearing a mask. And it's the ability for humans to wear masks and to mimic. But the mimicking process itself, although you might say it's negative in many ways because it defines the non-self, it actually can be useful. Because we can also mimic within us noble qualities and eventually actually embody those qualities.
I think it's all mimicry.
Yes, you do. Yeah. It's all masks, smoke and mirrors. I mean, the human can be the most elusive and the most dangerous life force because it can be the most destructive in some ways. But really, in its right place, it's wonderful because we can create heaven on earth with this. And we can truly see and illuminate what's in our basement and beneath us. And truly taste our true nature, which is ultimately to surrender to that and bow down to that and become that. Only the human can do that. The animal has to surrender to the human, the vegetative to the animal, and the soil to the vegetation. So, it leaves us with surrender. It takes us to the very, very last force here, which we're going to have to come back to black. Are you okay with human?
If you have to surrender to the noble, it sounds like we're just resisting it all the time. That's what we do.
Yeah, we are.
Just resisting it.
Yeah, because very rarely is the human directly below the noble in the house. Quite often what we have is an inversion or a swap around of the animal and the human, quite often. And we're running off our animal consciousness or instinctual consciousness. So then when the human then bows down to what is directly above it, it bows down to the instinctual animal consciousness. Can you see? But the animal can't surrender to the divine, so it separates us. It creates a soric state. So when we're driven too much by the animal force, we're in a state of separation most of the time. Trying very hard to get home, which is engaging the animal even more. Thinking about it, which takes us down into the basement in the opposite direction. Can you see?
How do you swap them around then?
How do we get them back?
Yeah.
The restoration of the hierarchy comes from the noble essence. Yeah, which is the good news in this whole program. So the noble self. The noble self has the capacity to organize and to align the kingdoms and the forces. So this part of us is sort of, I'm going to put it here, it reorganizes and aligns. So it actually puts the house back into order. We call this part the owner. The human part of us, by the way, we call the decoder. So we have the signal, we have the receiver, the amplifier, then the human makes sense of it. It's like what you were doing earlier, Sarah. You're labeling a feeling. You're trying to make sense of a pattern, trying to understand your reality, to see the big picture and how you fit into it. So the human does the business of decoding the signal. The owner isn't involved in any of this. It really has a frequency of a vibration of its own, which you might say is the complementary opposite of what's down here in the basement in some respects. So we call this the message, which is the signal from source. That signal from source informs us to actually who we really are, to what we really are, and what we're supposed to be doing. It gives us our sense of purpose. But it also fills us with life and love and joy. And it's this part, ultimately, that illuminates us. Why? Because this part is consciousness itself. Consciousness from this point steps down through each kingdom. So at this level, consciousness becomes mindful. At this level, it becomes attentive. At this level, we express consciousness as awareness. And as I mentioned earlier, at this level, we express consciousness as just noticing. Can you see? But it's a step down. This is pure consciousness, self-awareness, totally awake. Anything else? How am I doing? It's our true identity. Our true identity. This is the I am.
Is it divinity then?
It is. Divinity.
I thought you had told me that above the noble self was the divine self.
Yeah, we have another 3 levels above the noble,
Oh,
but we
right.
won't go into that today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, there are another 3 levels.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of divinity.
Yeah, really, this part of us is the part of us that remembers our connection to the source.
I see.
And the noble self in itself is a bridge to the higher life forces. It's a bridge.
The access. kind
Yes.
of point,
Yeah, but it remembers our true self, it remembers our true nature. It may not be fully aware because it hasn't experienced its wholeness yet until it's completed its incarnations. Can you see? Then it's had every type of experience that it wants to harvest from this earth journey. Every type of experience we're going to have, each and every one of us, because we want to experience ourselves fully. So it'll become eventually completely aware of itself. But when we're new spirits, you might say, or we're newly born, we're not self-aware. And if you look into something like theosophy, you'll see how it is that we actually evolve through the mineral, through the vegetative, through the animal kingdoms before we even arrive as a human being. As our consciousness is very dark and dormant and hidden and suppressed, and denied at this level, and it's awakening and awakening and awakening on a journey which spans perhaps millions of years, even before our first human incarnation. And then there's a huge acceleration once we arrive at the human realm. But that's in itself is spread over maybe hundreds, if not thousands of lifetimes before we're fully complete in terms of realizing the totality of who we are. And it is said that from this level, all our incarnations into human form are happening simultaneously. And it's not just human forms either.
That's the one I can't grab.
Yeah, well, time and energy and all of that is created from the human perspective on down. So beyond that, you're transcending time and space. We can't grab that because we're down here with our mind trying to figure out what's going on up here. It's impossible. The human brain can't comprehend it. We can only experience that and then we'll know it. This is the part of us that knows. It's our knowing. What the Greeks called gnosis. Our knowing. So therefore it's the part of us that is responsible for guidance.
So, techniques for noble understanding?
No, our techniques. Okay. Well, any technique which takes us to this gate here is the best technique. And there's only one gate here that stands between the human and noble human. And that's the gateway of surrender. So anything that really takes us to surrender authentically to that which is above is the best technique for you. But that might be anything for anybody. But it needs to cultivate the energy, the quality of surrender. And then that's the right thing.
But you've got to discern. Because you say,
Yeah.
you can surrender to anything
Yeah, well that's what the human does. The human does...
and delude yourself.
Yeah, the human does discern. It does, well, it should be discerning and monitoring and noticing what's going on in the lower kingdoms. But quite often we miss it and we don't discern, and then we get caught. And then that is amplified, then that is reflected into reality, and then we notice, oh my God, 6 years, 10 years later, what have I been doing with my life? Then we reflect.
But I guess
Make another choice.
if you discern, if you surrender to your noble self, then you'll feel the love and the joy, and that's an indicator
Yes, it is.
that it's the correct. You're surrendering to something authentic.
Exactly. You'll feel love, you'll feel joy, you'll feel bliss. You feel as if you're on track. And you'll feel clean, or cleaner at least, because the idea really is that it's the noble self, really ultimately, that does the job of healing. This heals. We often call this grace. Yeah. So once we have illumination, or consciousness, then through the action of grace we can actually heal that pattern. But it's only healed after it's been illuminated, because we have to become it. We have to become the resource, the gem, that which is of value.
How does one illuminate it?
The pattern down here, this is the human's job.
Yeah.
The human reflects, the human looks, it sees, it's introspective, it's contemplative, it's meditative. Like what Lucy was talking about, meditation, contemplation, reflection. This brings illumination. It's the human's job.
Sometimes my awareness is I don't know how to explain it, huge, and then I will come back down
Yeah.
and start swimming around.
In murk. Yeah.
Why do you come back down?
Because you've got more to do.
More to
You're
do?
not complete at this level. Yeah. If you were complete at this level for this incarnation, you would no longer have to be here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. There'd be no further function. There'd be no further usefulness for you being incarnate. The fact that you are here indicates that there's further work to be done here.
What
When
about to
someone
help?
completely awakens, they don't just die.
No. No, so you don't have to be here.
But they might do.
It's
You
a
don't
choice.
have to be here.
It's a choice. Yeah.
They might
Yeah.
die.
Yeah,
Well,
or they might be
if they're-
dying and then
If they can communicate, then they might hang around to teach them.
It's a choice.
Teach.
Yeah.
they
Yeah, they can teach and they can choose to do that. Yeah. But you don't. Once you've completed the mission in this life, you no longer need to be here. But you can choose to be here.
Someone said to me recently that the only reason the lamas teach is because of us. Well, the only reason they speak, even.
Yeah, or even so. Sometimes I've read somewhere that the only reason why they're here in the first place is they chose to be here. Most of us are compelled. Most of us are compelled to be here. Karma compels us. But when we have a completely clean basement, we are complete. We're finished. We're no longer compelled. It's a choice. We come to a truly human level and we choose. Okay, I think we're going to make a choice here to close and to complete today's talk. So, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
pleasure.
very much.